reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, entitled Hiranyakasipu, King of the Demons, Text 14. The history of Hiranyakasipu has a very great lesson on how to understand and deal with the demonic tendencies within our own hearts. Because Srimad Bhagavatam, the most important histories within the span of creation, were personally selected by Shukadeva Goswami to speak for the ultimate welfare of all living beings. We find here the Lord has just appeared as Varaha on the plea of the saintly persons, the demigods, the pious and innocent. And all he did was try to rescue the earth from a very, very dangerous, horrible situation. It was Hiranyaksha who challenged him. He didn't even come and attack Hiranyaksha. He was just protecting the innocent. But this was intolerable to Hiranyaksha, who approached him and blasphemed the Lord horribly to incite his anger, so that the Lord would fight with him. Yes? It is another way of inducing someone to fight. One is to just go up and slap him or kick him or hit him or whatever. Another is to speak such critical, harsh words that have to incite anger in a person to retaliate. After blaspheming Lord Varaha, blaspheming how he looked, blaspheming his motivations, Varahadev just ignored him and just tended to his business of taking care of the earth. But Hiranyaksha just followed behind and kept harassing him, and ultimately challenged him to fight, calling him a coward for running away. Now Hiranyaksha, he was a Rakshasa. Hiranyakasipu cites Hiranyaksha. He said, I'm going to please my brother by cutting the head off of Vishnu and drinking his blood, because my brother liked to suck blood. So that was Hiranyaksha. He was a murderer, but not like today's murderers. He was a whole nother league. He terrorized the entire universe, exploited people's wealth. Pages and pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam described the immense terrorist activities of Hiranyaksha. You know, the types of terrorist activities like the World Trade Center, very horrible thing. But for Hiranyaksha, that kind of terrorism, he could do that when he was sleeping. He was terrorizing entire planets. Vicious, cruel. And he attacked the Lord. And even in the fight, Lord Vishnu was very fair. Yes? Hiranyakashipu, any means he wanted to kill. He was so proud. And while they were fighting, he dropped his club. And Lord Vishnu wouldn't hit him unless it was a fair fight. He picked up the club to hand it back to him. Yes, very fair, very nice. And Hiranyaksha was doing all sorts of illegal types of fighting by not just fight, but he was creating by his mystic powers illusions to somehow or other mystify and distract the Lord so he could kill him. And still the Lord was kind, so fair. Finally, the demigods were praying, screaming, the sages, kill him, kill him. It's getting to be night. He's going to get more power than kill him now. So finally the Lord, just with his hoof, he just touched Hiranyaksha. And it cracked. He fell down. And as he was falling, the Lord, just to make it more picturesque, he stabbed him with his tusk. And Hiranyaksha was dead. Now here we find Hiranyakasipu. He is so angry. And he's speaking in this chapter what an immoral, unethical, vicious rascal Vishnu is, and how wonderful his brother was. How he was heroic, how he was a great man, how he was faithful, how he was endowed with all good qualities. Hare Krishna. And he's speaking all these horrible things about Vishnu, all horrible things about Brahmins. But Hiranyakashipu could not see a single fault in himself or his brother. He's accusing the Lord of not being equal to everyone. Is Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu equal to everyone? Hiranyakashipu is saying, the Brahmins, they must be destroyed. The pious people, they must be destroyed. It is an amazing attribute of the false ego. How a person like Hiranyakashipu, or that tendency within us, could have so many faults and just see even little faults in others. And I hate to say this, but I have seen this quality even in very unfortunate degrees in devotees. Now, I definitely will not mention any names, but I have seen devotee who is not following the regulative principles, taking intoxications, having illicit sex. I don't think he was eating meat, but he was doing those two things. Hadn't chanted his 16 rounds, although he was initiated devotees, in years. But if someone in the kitchen didn't wash the pots exactly the way Prabhupada said you should wash pots, he would go in a tirade against that person. So angry. Just blasting that person. And anybody else who didn't, just little things. Tying the dhoti wrong, blasting against that person. Not only to the person, but to others. Does that make sense? These other people are chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regular principles, dedicated to devotional service. Can't blame anyone except material energy. Everyone's a victim. But the problem is material energy blames us. It's not us to blame, but material energy, the laws of karma, everyone will get what they deserve. There is a universal justice system. Well, why can't we see? This is the demoniac tendency, the false ego. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, the reason I see a fault in another is because I am honeycombed with so many thousands of faults myself. The more we have faults, the more we have tendency to see others' faults. And by being very harsh with the faults of others, it's some sort of a psychological disease that it helps us to justify and hide from our own faults. Because if we look inside, we have to face the reality. But if we're looking outside for faults in others, we don't have to face the reality. We divert our attention away. And then our faults internally just expand, expand, expand. What you associate with, you become. If you focus on the faults of others, you become affected by those faults. If you focus on the good qualities of others, you become affected by those good qualities. Shishupal, another example. The man was a rascal. We know the story. From birth he was a rascal. Most children, when they are born, they cry. Very sweet little cries. Like that. Well, little Shishupal, when he was born, he brayed like an ass. It was horrible. Terrified his own mother. This little baby comes out. This horrible, horrible sound. Just, but still motherly love. Love is blind. And he had all arms and 3 eyes. Hare Krishna. And the first words that came out of his mouth was blasphemy of Krishna. He could do nothing but blaspheme Krishna. No, Krishna is the soul. He's the absolute truth. He's all perfect. All the Vedas, all the Puranas, the Upanishads, all the great sages of all the scriptures throughout history are glorifying God. The unlimited divine attributes of Lord. But Shishupal could not see a single good thing about Krishna. He only saw faults. But the amazing thing is he couldn't see a single fault in himself. He would compare himself to Krishna. Krishna's just nobody, he's just low caste, dirty little cowherd boy. What right does he have to think he's a Kshatriya? But he was very, very proud. That is Shishupal. Cannot see a single problem with himself, but finds all problems with Krishna. And if you're finding your problems with Krishna, ultimately, because every living being is part and parcel of Krishna, you're seeing problem with everything, everyone. So this is a serious egoistic disease. And we cannot improve ourselves as long as we live by this principle of just seeing the faults in others and not looking inside. What are my problems? Ultimately, Shishupal was fortunate because he dovetailed his fault-finding propensities in Krishna. And he was so absorbed, practically 24 hours a day, in thinking of the faults of Krishna. Narada Muni, humble Vaishnava, he's praising Shishupal because he's absorbed in Krishna. The purpose of life is to absorb our consciousness in Krishna. Read the words of Ravana. Read the words of Hiranyakasipu. Read the words of all the great demons in the scriptures. And we'll find a very accurate manifestation of the tendencies within our own hearts, of how we think, the nature of the mind. So Hiranyakasipu was just saying that Hiranyaksha was such a noble and good soul. And Vishnu took this lowly form of a boor and nonsense rascal and killed my brother for no good reason at all. Therefore, Vishnu must be killed. He's given up his equality. He's acting abominably. He must be killed. Hare Krishna. And Hiranyakasipu says, even though he's the supreme personality of Godhead, I will kill him. He knew that Vishnu is God. This is the power of illusion. Even you know something, still, your lower nature thinks you can get away with it. We know the laws of karma. We know, as you sow, so shall you reap. Whatever you do, there will be a reaction. But still, let me do it. I'll be happy. When we have a strong desire, the mind overcomes the intelligence. Prabhupada gives that example of the chariot and the driver. Yes, the horses are the five senses. The chariot is the body. The reins or the ropes that are meant to control the horses is the mind. And the charioteer is the intelligence. And the passenger is you and me, the soul. If you have a good charioteer, the charioteer will control the ropes, control the horses, and bring you to the proper destination. But if the horses and the ropes overcome the strength of the intelligence, it will take you to the most dangerous conditions which are destined for suffering. The reason why it is so essential to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day, to read Bhagavad Gita regularly, to come to the satsang of saintly persons who are discussing the goal of life, is to strengthen and nourish our intelligence. Real intelligence is the Word of God. The Supreme Lord speaks the truth, and to the degree we follow that truth, that is intelligence. Intelligence has the power to discriminate What is favorable for devotional service and what is unfavorable for devotional service. When the mind and the senses, influenced by the false ego, dictate to the intelligence, everything goes completely crazy. Like this. Hiranyakasipu is saying right out, Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the cause of all causes. He's the source of everything. He's the father of all living beings. But I will kill him. And he really believed he could kill him. Because I'm right and Vishnu's wrong. Vishnu's protecting Dharma since time immemorial, establishing good principles. Hiranyakashipu and his brother are causing more suffering than this world ever knew. Only for one purpose, for their own individual sense gratification. And yet, he's thinking, I'm right and Vishnu's wrong. I will kill him. Hare Krishna. And little Prahlad, he was so nice. He was so polite, respectful, and loving to his father, to his mother, to his relatives. He was a very nice student. He had nothing but good qualities. But Hiranyakashipu saw nothing but fault in that little boy, to the extent that he used all his power to murder his own son. Why? Because he was faithful to Vishnu. So this is what happens when our demoniac nature becomes prominent over our divine nature. We become deluded. Our intelligence is lost. And even though we know what is the truth, we know what is to be done, we know what the reaction will be, still we actually believe that we can get away with it. Hare Krishna. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, he wrote that example of the two dogs within the heart. Yesterday we were talking about dogs. We'll continue our discussion about dogs today. Bhagavad Gita tells about the divine and the demoniac nature. In this age of Kali Yuga, they are within the same heart. Srila Prabhupada explains, in the Satya Yuga, they were in different planets. Demons and devotees. In Kali Yuga, it's like two different people within the same heart. One knows what's right and wants to do right, and the other is just anything for our own prestige or sense gratification. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj explains like good dog and bad dog. The bad dog is our demoniac nature, howling and screaming for sense enjoyment. Howling and screaming. The words of our false ego. Seeing faults in others. Tendency to exploit others. Tendency to commit sinful activities. And the good dog is speaking the truth. What is favorable for devotional service? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Become the servant of the servant, be humble. Control your senses and follow moral, ethical principles. So both these dogs are howling. Yes. And do you hear these two voices sometimes? Which is louder? Say Hari Bol if your good dog is usually louder. I'm afraid to ask the next obvious question. Say Hari Bol if that bad dog is usually louder. I will not take that as a glorification of the bad dog. So there's a battle going on between the divine and demoniac nature, between the good dog and bad dog. And the one that's going to howl the loudest and dictate our life, the one that's going to win the battle, is the one we feed the most food to. Yes? Because dogs need to eat. Without food, they became weak. They dwindle, and they die. So that is where our intelligence is so important. We have a choice. The bad dog is howling in joy by any means. Don't worry about offending devotees. Don't worry about causing pain to others. If it feels good, do it. Hare Krishna. Don't worry about betraying God within your heart and ruining your own spiritual life. Do it. Everyone else's. Hare Krishna. Whichever we nourish by following. Every time you follow the dictations of the good dog, you're feeding it, and it becomes stronger. Every time you follow the dictations of the bad dog, you're feeding it, and it becomes stronger. And our time is precious. The time that we spent in our life to acknowledge and follow the principles of our divine nature nourishes and makes our divine nature stronger and stronger and stronger. And every single time we make the choice to follow our dark side, to feed the bad dog, that tendency becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. This is how material nature works. When you commit a sinful act, either with our words or our actions, not only is there eventually going to be a sinful reaction, it may be unmanifested now, but it will come. But worse than the unmanifested sinful reaction, and worse than the suffering that will come from that sinful reaction, prarabdha and aprarabdha, worse, is every time you do it, your propensity to do it again becomes so much stronger. We become more and more addicted to that, to giving in to our demoniac nature. The more you feed that bad dog, the louder it's going to howl, the more it's going to demand from you, and the more you're going to be inclined to feed it more and more and more. But if we use our free will, however difficult it may be, to make the right choices, gradually that howling of the bad dog, and actually at the beginning, not only at the beginning, but maybe from your relative perception for a long time, it's not that you feed the good dog and the bad dog goes, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." It's going to howl louder. Yes. Because you've spoiled it. You've given it everything it wanted for so long. And it's howling. Howling for more. And if you don't give it what it wants, it's going to howl louder. Twice as loud, 3 times as loud, 4 times as loud. I think the process doesn't work. Some devotees have this question. Yes, I had so many material desires and inclinations, and my mind was restless, and now I'm chanting Hare Krishna, and now I'm following the 4 regular principles, and my mind is screaming louder than it did before I was a devotee. Have any of you ever had that experience? No. Say it loud if you... Have any of you never had that experience? See, you're all so humble. Even if you did, you wouldn't say it. But it is a reality. Because when you start depriving that bad dog of what it has been getting from you, he sees he's losing control over you. And he's going to become more vicious, more angry, and scream louder than ever before. But we shouldn't lose faith. We shouldn't think that this means the process doesn't work. It actually means that the process is working. Hare Krishna. Just like Prabhupada explained, when you boil to make ghee, there's different ways of making ghee. But when you boil, the impurities come to the top. Yes? Now when it's just that type of, when it's just butter or yogurt, whatever it may be, when it's just yogurt, it's like, or butter, yeah, they churn, it's made with butter. Some people make the butter out of cream, some people make the butter out of yogurt. Dahi, the Ayurvedic way is dahi. Hare Krishna. So when you're boiling the butter, when you first put it in the pot, butter looks so nice. It's just like a creamy color. But then all of a sudden, these things start coming to the top. More and more and more and more. And you have to keep scraping it off and scraping it off and scraping it off. Now if you don't have faith in the process, you'll never get ghee. You'll say, actually, it looked a lot nicer before I started boiling it, so you'll just take it off the fire. Yes. The fire of devotional service separates our bad qualities from our heart. And they start coming to the surface. And we see it. And it's horrible. We just have to keep the fire of chanting the holy names. Keep the fire of devotional service. Let them keep coming. But don't give in to those dictations. Just keep scraping them off as they're coming. Just keep neglecting them when they're coming. And how do we neglect them? By keeping our body and mind engaged in positive spiritual activities. As impurities start coming to the surface of our heart, they can destroy us unless we're very actively engaged in service. There has to be a higher alternative. We can't be idle. If we're busy hearing, chanting, busy doing service, busy in the association of devotees, then these dictations will not overcome us. Gradually they're removed. So yes, when you start to starve that bad dog within your heart, he is going to howl like never before. He's going to show his fangs like never before. He's going to demand and permeate your consciousness. Hare Krishna. That's why Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kashchid yatati siddhaye yatanam api siddhanam kashchin mam veti tattvata. Out of thousands of people, one endeavors for perfection. And of those who endeavor, hardly one actually attains me. Why? Because when you endeavor, so many alternatives are going to be there. What we're giving up, it's going to scream so loudly in due course of time. And you see, because you've been feeding that bad dog for so long, it has such a surplus of nourishment. It's not in a day or a week, it's just going to go. And if you don't feed it, and if you don't feed it, and even years, you put lifetimes of surplus and food in the burning belly of that beast. Hare Krishna. And therefore, even years later, like that. I'm sorry. Even decades later, it may be screaming. But it's just a matter of time. Just keep feeding that good dog, and he's going to overcome. And soon the bad dog is just going to go. And eventually, then we go back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. It's a science. It's a great science. So Hiranyakasipu, he was like personification of this bad dog. Can't see any faults in himself, although he's an ocean of faults. And sees only faults in Vishnu, who's an ocean of good qualities. It really doesn't make sense. But the amazing thing is Hiranyakashipu is not speaking this way because he is some sort of a politician who knows that what he's saying is not right, but he's just saying it to convince others. He believes his words. He actually believes it. That is what we're all dealing with. So in this particular verse, after he tells his malicious, cruel demons, who are his associates, his servants, he tells them, when I'm going to perform my tapasya, and I'm going to fight Vishnu, and I will kill him. The fact that he's the supreme, all-powerful God of creation is a detail, but I will kill him. And while I'm doing that, you have to destroy everything that's connected to him in the universe. Anything that could possibly satisfy Vishnu must be destroyed. Brahmins satisfy Vishnu because they are leading society. by teaching them morality, ethics, and devotional service. You must kill the Brahmin class, destroy them. Anyone who's performing yajna, anyone who's giving in charity, anyone who's pious must be killed. That was his order. And the mines, where there's precious metals and jewels, destroy them, burn them. Wherever there's a hermitage of saints, or there's a school that's teaching children nice things, burn it down and kill the teachers. Wherever there's nice trees that give flowers, because those flowers could be offered to Vishnu and please him, cut down the trees, burn the forests. The Lord is very affectionate toward cows. Kill all the cowherd men and slaughter and eat all the cows. Hare Krishna. Now this is not just something theoretical. He happens to be controlling a better part of the universe. He has all power. Consider if the Prime Minister and his party in India gave this dictation and had the entire army out with all their weapons, doing what Hiranyakasipu was ordering his people to do. What chance would the people have? Well, the Indian army and the Indian politicians are nothing compared to Hiranyakasipu and his army. What to speak of his army? Hiranyakasipu could destroy the entire Indian army, American army, Russian army, Pakistani army just by his glance. Just by raising his eyebrows, they would all surrender and take his side. That was his power. We don't see any rulers like that these days. Very powerful. And he's giving the order, and they're doing it. In today's verse, they're actually in the process. The demons, it's not saying they will. It's in the past tense. That means they've already done it. And they're still doing it. They set fire to the cities, villages, pasturing grounds, cow pens, gardens, agricultural fields, natural forests. They would be very controversial amongst the environmentalists of today. They burn the hermitages of saintly persons, the important mines that produce valuable metals, the residential quarters of the agriculturalists, the mountain villages and the villages of the cow protectors and the cowherd men. They also burn the government capitals. There was no competition left. He was the sole controller. That was the state of affairs when little Prahlad was born. Hare Krishna. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is focusing on the trees that produce fruits and flowers. How they're so important because Krishna is satisfied even with a simple offering of a leaf, a fruit or flower. Devotional service is so simple. Krishna accepts our intention. There is no impediment to pleasing Krishna if we want to. There's no material circumstance that could interfere. Vishaka Priya Devi and Dwarkadish Prabhu, they produced that nice drama, about the persecution of the devotees in Russia by one of the two most powerful governments in the world? And the amazing thing we find there is the demoniac powers within this world. They can take away our wealth. They can take away our health. They can take away our external freedom. They can take away our physical health, our physical life. But no power has the ability to take from a sincere devotee's heart the will to please Krishna. Devotional service is unconditional. Even if you're in prison, even if you're being tortured, even if you're on your deathbed and all the organs and everything in your body is falling apart, still, you could want to satisfy Krishna. And Krishna is so easily satisfied, you don't need anything to satisfy him except that wish. If you lose all your wealth, anybody could pick a leaf. Yes? And that's enough to purchase Krishna, if it's offered with a devotion. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada said there is no material impediments to performing devotional service if we are sincere. In any situation, all that's required is the will to please Krishna.